Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the big room where all the alien leaders met. The place was huge and made of some kind of crystal that made everything shine with strange colors. He had been standing there for 2 hours listening to the same complaints over and over again. His face showed nothing, but inside he was getting tired of all this nonsense. The room was full of different kinds of aliens. Some looked like giant bugs with too many arms. Others floated in the air like ghosts made of light. There were fish people in water suits and rock creatures that moved very slowly. All of them were angry at humans today. Commander Lisa Hayes sat in the area where humans were allowed to watch. She had her computer pad in her hands, but she was not looking at it anymore. She was watching Jake and wondering how much more of this he could take. Lisa had been working with aliens for 5 years now, and she thought she understood them. Today, she was learning that she had been wrong about everything. The Zephyrian ambassador was talking again. He had 4 arms, and he was waving all of them around like he was trying to fly. His name was Chancellor Vex, and he always acted like he was the most important person in any room. Right now, he was pointing one of his arms at Jake and making demands. "The human species has become too strong," Vex said in his high voice that always sounded angry. "Your ships are faster than ours. Your weapons are better than ours. Your colonies are growing bigger every day. This is not fair to the rest of us." Jake did not move or speak. He just stood there like a statue and let the alien keep talking. Lisa knew that look on his face. It was the same look he had when he was deciding whether to fight or walk away from a fight. She hoped he would choose to walk away this time. Dr. Emma Collins was sitting next to Lisa. Emma was the smartest human on the council, and she had spent years teaching aliens about human science. She had helped them build better computers and faster ships. She had shown them how to make medicine that could cure diseases they had never been able to fix before. Now she was listening to these same aliens say that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. A Thrakari delegate started clicking his mouthparts together. This was how his species talked when they agreed with someone. The Thrakari looked like giant ants, but they were very smart. Emma had worked with many of them, and she thought they were her friends. Now they were clicking in agreement with everything Vex said about humans being a threat. The Voidlings started humming. When they hummed together, it meant they supported what was being said. The Voidlings were made of light and energy, and they were usually very peaceful. Emma had helped them learn how to use solid matter to build things. She had thought they were grateful for her help. Now they were humming their support for putting limits on human progress. "We have decided that humans must be controlled," Vex continued. "You will give us all your technology. You will stop building new colonies. You will reduce the size of your military. You will accept limits on how many children you can have. These things are necessary for peace in the galaxy." Jake finally moved. He turned his head slightly to look at the other human delegates. Lisa saw something in his eyes that made her stomach feel cold. Emma saw it too, and she started putting her papers away, even though no one had told her to do that. The vote began. Each species had to say yes or no to the new rules for humans. The Zephyrians said yes. The Thrakari said yes. The Voidlings said yes. One by one, every alien species in the room voted to put chains on humanity. Not one of them voted to support the humans who had helped them and worked with them for years. Jake listened to every vote. His face still showed nothing, but Lisa could see his hands were pressed tight against his sides. When the last vote was counted, the result was clear. Every alien species had voted against humans. They all wanted to limit human growth and take human technology for themselves. Chancellor Vex smiled with his strange alien mouth. "The vote is final," he said. "Humans will accept these new rules, or they will be forced to leave the council. You have 1 week to agree to our terms." That was when Jake Morrison did something that surprised everyone in the room. He nodded once. Just one small movement of his head up and down. Then he turned around and started walking toward the door. He did not say anything. He did not argue or complain or ask for more time. He just walked. Lisa watched him go, and then she closed her computer pad. The sound it made was very quiet, but in the silent room everyone heard it. She stood up and followed Jake toward the door. Emma gathered up the rest of her papers and followed Lisa. One by one, every human in the room started walking toward the exit. The aliens watched in confusion as all the humans left the room without saying a word. They had expected arguments and protests and angry speeches. Instead, they got silence and empty chairs where humans used to sit. Captain Ben Foster was drinking coffee in his ship when the message came. His exploration vessel was floating near a big gate that let ships travel between stars very fast. The gate was one of many that humans had helped build across the galaxy. Ben had been planning to explore a new star system tomorrow, but the message changed everything. The message was very short. It only had 3 words, but Ben understood what they meant. Protocol 7 was something all human ship captains knew about, but hoped they would never have to use. It meant that all humans had to leave alien space right away and come home to human worlds. Ben put down his coffee cup and walked to the bridge of his ship. His crew was already there waiting for orders. They had all received the same message, and they all knew what it meant. Ben looked at each of them and saw that they were ready to do whatever was needed. "Set course for Earth," he told his pilot. "Maximum speed." His pilot nodded and started pushing buttons on her control panel. The ship turned around and headed toward the gate that would take them home. Ben did not look back at the alien space station they were leaving behind. He had spent 2 years exploring that region of space and helping alien scientists study new planets. Now all of that work was over. Across the galaxy, other human ships were doing the same thing. Trade vessels that were in the middle of delivering goods to alien worlds suddenly changed course and headed home. The alien customers who were waiting for their deliveries watched in confusion as human ships disappeared into hyperspace without explanation. Research stations that humans had built on alien worlds started shutting down. Dr. Kate Wilson had been working on a cure for a disease that was killing millions of aquarian fish people. She had been very close to finding the answer, but now she was packing up all her equipment and research files. The aquarian scientist who had been working with her begged her to stay, but she did not answer them. Governor Sarah Martinez was in charge of New Texas, which was the biggest human colony in alien space. The planet had 2 million humans living on it, and they had built cities and farms and factories. Sarah received the Protocol 7 message while she was having dinner with her family. She put down her fork and called an emergency meeting of all the colony leaders. "We have 72 hours to evacuate everyone," she told them. "I know this seems impossible, but we have practiced for this day. Everyone knows what to do." The colony leaders looked shocked, but they did not argue. They had all received training on emergency evacuation procedures. They had hoped they would never need to use that training, but now the time had come. Within 1 hour, transport ships were landing all over New Texas to pick up the colonists. Aliens who lived on nearby worlds watched in amazement as millions of humans packed up their entire lives and left. The humans took everything they could carry, but they left behind all the buildings and machines they had built. Empty cities stood like monuments to human engineering, but no humans remained to operate them. Captain Nathan Reed was in command of a monitoring station at the edge of the galaxy. His job was to watch for dangerous ships or strange signals from unknown parts of space. The station was very important because it protected both human and alien worlds from threats. Nathan had 50 people working with him, and they all took their job very seriously. When the Protocol 7 message arrived, Nathan felt sad because he knew his station helped keep alien worlds safe. But orders were orders, and Nathan had been a soldier for 20 years. He told his crew to pack up all the important equipment and set the station to destroy itself after they left. The Galactic News Network did not understand what was happening at first. Their reporters were used to humans being very talkative and willing to explain everything. Now suddenly no human would answer their questions or give interviews. Reporter Clicks 9 tried to contact human officials, but all his messages were ignored. "This is just a temporary anger," Clicks9 told his viewers. "Humans always get emotional about things, but they will calm down soon. They need the council more than the council needs them. They will come back and ask to be forgiven." But as days passed, it became clear that this was not temporary anger. Every human ship had left alien space. Every human colony had been evacuated. Every human research station had been shut down. The aliens were starting to realize that humans had really left and were not coming back. President Helen Brooks called a meeting of all human leaders on Earth. Representatives from every human world came to listen to what she had to say. The meeting was held in a big room that could hold thousands of people, but Helen spoke quietly and everyone listened carefully. "The aliens have made their choice," she said. "They see us as servants who got too big for our place. They want to control us and take our technology for themselves. We will not accept this treatment. From now on, humanity will make its own way among the stars." The human leaders voted to support the president. They would build new colonies far away from alien space. They would develop new technology without sharing it with aliens who did not respect them. They would trade with species who treated them as equals instead of servants. Meanwhile, the aliens were starting to notice problems. Ships that had been easy to fly were now having technical difficulties. Computer systems that had worked perfectly for years were starting to malfunction. Communication networks were breaking down and no one knew how to fix them. The aliens had not realized how much they depended on human knowledge and human work to keep their civilization running smoothly. 3 months had passed since the humans left, and things were starting to go wrong in many places across the galaxy. The first big disaster happened at the Centauri Trade Hub, which was a huge space station where ships from different worlds came to buy and sell things. The station was so big that it had its own artificial gravity and millions of aliens lived and worked there. The problem started in the morning when the gravity generators began making strange noises. The alien engineers who worked at the station had never heard these sounds before, and they did not know what was causing them. They looked at the instruction manuals that humans had written, but the technical language was too difficult for them to understand. The gravity generators had been designed by human engineers who understood how to bend space and time to create artificial gravity. The aliens had been happy to use this technology, but they had never learned how it actually worked. They had always assumed that if something broke, they could just ask the humans to fix it. By afternoon, the gravity in some parts of the station was getting weaker. People and objects started floating around in areas where they should have been held down by artificial gravity. The alien engineers tried to adjust the controls, but every change they made seemed to make the problem worse. Director Zeph Ka was a voidling who ran the biggest manufacturing planet in his sector. Voidlings were made of energy and light, so they did not need solid bodies like other species. Zeph Ka had worked with human programmers to create computer systems that could think and learn like living creatures. These systems had been running his factories for years without any problems. Now the computer systems were shutting down one by one, and Zeph Ka did not know why. He tried to contact the human programmer who had designed the systems, but Kelly James was no longer answering messages from aliens. The computers had been programmed to solve problems by themselves, but apparently they needed human supervision to work properly. Without the smart computer systems, the factories could not operate. Machines that had been making products for years suddenly stopped working. Assembly lines that had never broken down before started producing defective goods. The economic impact was enormous because these factories supplied products to hundreds of different worlds. The shipping industry was having even bigger problems. Human engineers had designed special containers that could adjust their size and shape to fit different types of cargo. The containers used magnetic fields that could be controlled by computer to organize themselves automatically. This had made shipping much faster and cheaper than ever before. But now the containers were malfunctioning. They would change shape at the wrong times and crush the cargo inside them. The magnetic fields would activate randomly and cause containers to stick. together in ways that made them impossible to separate. Shipping companies across the galaxy were losing enormous amounts of money because they could not transport goods safely. Colonel Danny Wright had been stationed at a military base that was shared by humans and aliens. He had helped design defense systems that protected several important worlds from pirates and hostile forces. Now he was working at a new human base far beyond the edge of the galaxy, where aliens could not find him. Danny spent his days listening to alien military communications, and the reports he heard made him smile grimly. The defense systems he had helped build were failing all across alien space. The computers that controlled weapons and shields needed constant updates and maintenance that only humans knew how to provide. The Kronos Prime defense network had already suffered 3 major failures in the past month. Pirates who had never dared to attack that world before were now making regular raids because they knew the defenses were not working properly. The alien military commanders were panicking because they did not know how to fix their own equipment. The medical field, the situation was even more serious. Human doctors and scientists had developed treatments for diseases that had been killing aliens for thousands of years. They had created medicines that worked on different alien biology and surgical techniques that could save lives that had been lost before. The Intergalactic Medical Alliance discovered that 30% of their most important treatments depended on human research and human-made medicines. Without humans to continue developing new treatments and manufacturing existing ones, many aliens were going to die from diseases that had become curable. Dr. Rick Adams had been working with alien doctors for years to develop new surgical procedures. He had taught them how to operate on different types of alien bodies and how to use human medical technology. Now he was working in a human research facility that was completely independent from alien oversight. Rick received dozens of desperate messages every day from alien doctors who were facing medical emergencies they did not know how to handle. Patients were dying because the doctors did not have access to human medical knowledge and human-made equipment. Rick read these messages, but he did not reply to any of them. The space transportation system was also breaking down. Humans had designed the quantum gates that allowed ships to travel between star systems in minutes instead of years. The gates were supposed to maintain themselves automatically, but they needed human technicians to handle unusual problems and perform complex repairs. Warning. Signals were starting to appear at gates throughout the galaxy. The safety systems that prevented accidents during transportation were showing error messages that alien technicians could not understand. Several ships had already been lost when gates malfunctioned during transport attempts. The worst part for the aliens was that they were starting to realize how dependent they had become on human technology and human knowledge. For years, they had thought of humans as useful assistants who helped with technical problems. Now they understood that humans had been the ones keeping their entire civilization running smoothly. In corporate boardrooms across the galaxy, panic was spreading as executives realized how much of their business depended on human innovation. The Stellar Mining Consortium found that their most profitable mining operations used equipment that only humans knew how to operate and maintain. Without human technicians, the mining equipment was becoming useless metal. Chancellor Vex stood in front of the emergency meeting of the Galactic Council, and his 4 arms were shaking. 6 months ago, he had been confident and proud when he led the vote to control humanity. Now he looked scared and desperate as he faced the other alien leaders. Reports of system failures were coming in from every part of the galaxy, and everyone was looking to him for answers. "We must contact the humans immediately," said Senator Thies of the Aquarian Federation. Her gills were opening and closing rapidly, which showed that she was very upset. "Our water purification systems are failing on 17 different worlds. Without human biotechnology, our people will start dying from poisoned water within weeks." The other council members started talking all at once. Everyone had similar problems to report. The Mantoid Consortium had lost contact with half of their worlds because their communication systems were breaking down. The crystalline collective could not maintain their energy networks without human-designed power generators. Even the ancient voidlings were having trouble with the solid matter technology that humans had taught them to use. Clicks 9, the mantoid reporter, was clicking his mandibles nervously as he spoke to the council. This was the same reporter who had laughed at human departure just months ago. He had told his viewers that humans would come crawling back within days, begging to be readmitted to the council. Now his own news network was falling apart because it depended entirely on human-designed quantum transmitters to broadcast across the galaxy. Half of our news broadcasts are not reaching the outer rim territories, Clicks 9 admitted with shame in his voice. Our technicians cannot repair the quantum transmitters because they do not understand how human quantum mechanics work. We are losing contact with billions of viewers every day. Ambassador Felix Chen was the only human who had stayed behind when all the others left. He was not officially part of the council anymore, but they had asked him to observe their meetings and report back to the human government. Felix watched the alien panic with cold satisfaction because he remembered how these same beings had treated humanity just months before. The council tried several different approaches to solve their human problem. First, they sent formal diplomatic messages asking humans to return and help with what they called temporary technical difficulties. These messages were written as if the humans were employees who had quit their jobs and needed to be convinced to come back to work. The human government did not reply to any of these messages. Every diplomatic communication was ignored completely. The aliens had expected angry responses or demands for apologies, but instead, they got complete silence. This silence was somehow more frightening than any angry words would have been. When the diplomatic approach failed, the council tried offering small concessions. They said they would reduce some of the restrictions they had voted to place on humanity. They offered to let humans keep more of their technology and build a few more colonies. They acted as if this was a business negotiation where both sides would compromise to reach an agreement. Again, the humans did not respond at all. The offers were ignored, just like the diplomatic messages had been. Felix Chen watched the council members become more and more frustrated as their attempts at communication were met with complete silence. They were starting to understand that this was not a negotiation. The Thrakari hive was facing a crisis that threatened their entire species. The Thrakari were like a giant ant colony where all the individual aliens were connected by a biological, neural network. This network allowed them to share thoughts and work together as a perfect team. The network had been designed with help from human neuroscientist Dr. Katie Morrison, who understood how to connect different types of brains. Now the neural network was breaking down. Individual Thrakari were losing contact with the hive mind and becoming confused and lost. Some were becoming violent because they could not handle being separated from their species' consciousness. The Thrakari leaders were desperate because they did not know how to fix their own biological systems without human help. Captain Tony Miller commanded a human exploration ship that was now operating beyond the edge of the galaxy. He received dozens of messages every day from alien military commanders who had been his friends and allies. These former allies were begging for technical assistance and offering valuable resources in exchange for help with their failing defense systems. Some of the alien messages were not asking for help, but making threats instead. A few alien military leaders said they would use force to make humans return and fix their problems. Tony read these threat messages and laughed because he knew that most alien weapon systems were also failing without human maintenance. The quantum gate network that connected the galaxy was showing dangerous signs of instability. The gates had been built to last for thousands of years and to repair themselves automatically when minor problems occurred. But the central control systems needed human intuition and creativity to handle major problems that the automatic systems could not solve. Warning signals appeared at gates throughout the galaxy as the control algorithms encountered situations they were not programmed to handle. The safety margins that prevented catastrophic failures were getting smaller every day. Alien technicians tried to understand the control systems, but the mathematics involved were beyond their comprehension. The first major disaster happened in the Vega system, where one of the oldest quantum gates suddenly exploded without warning. The explosion destroyed the gate and several nearby ships and completely cut off contact with an entire sector of space. Millions of aliens living in that sector were now trapped with no way to travel to other star systems. The gate explosion sent shockwaves through the Council because it proved that the situation was getting worse instead of better. The aliens realized that more gates could explode at any time and cut off more parts of the galaxy. Their entire civilization was built around the assumption that they could travel quickly between stars, but now that assumption was proving false. Chancellor Vex called another emergency meeting, and this time his voice was shaking as he spoke to the other council members. The confident politician who had led the vote against humanity was now a frightened leader, facing the collapse of everything he had worked to build. "We must face the truth," he said in a quiet voice that was very different from his usual loud speeches. "We made a terrible mistake when we voted to control humanity. We thought they were our servants, but they were actually our partners. Without them, our civilization is falling apart." The other council members sat in shocked silence as they finally began to understand the magnitude of their error. 6 months after the humans walked away from the Galactic Council, the numbers told a story that no one wanted to believe. Galactic trade had dropped by 70% because shipping companies could not move goods safely without human-designed containers and navigation systems. Energy production was down 60% across Council space as power plants failed without human maintenance. Medical facilities were operating at half capacity as human-designed equipment broke down with no one to repair it. Admiral Ross Patterson sat in his office on New Geneva, which had become the capital world of humanity's new independent colonies. The office walls were covered with charts and graphs showing the economic collapse happening in alien space. Ross felt no joy in watching the alien civilization fall apart, but he also felt no sympathy for beings who had brought this disaster on themselves through their own arrogance and fear. The intelligence reports that crossed his desk every day painted a picture of a galaxy in chaos. Supply lines that had operated smoothly for centuries were breaking down as transport ships got lost without human navigation technology. Entire planets were running out of essential goods because the complex logistics networks that moved resources around the galaxy had been designed by human planners. The breaking point came when the Zephyrian homeworld faced its worst crisis in 1,000 years. The orbital defense grid that protected their capital planet went offline during a coordinated pirate attack. The same defensive systems that Chancellor Vex had demanded humans not upgrade were now completely useless when his people needed them most. The pirates had been watching and waiting for this opportunity. They knew that alien defense systems were failing across the galaxy, and they had organized themselves into larger and more dangerous groups. The attack on the Zephyrian homeworld lasted for 3 days and caused billions of credits in damage before the pirates finally retreated with their stolen goods. Chancellor Vex was forced to resign in disgrace after the attack. His political career was destroyed, and his own people blamed him for the disaster that had befallen their world. The other council members who had supported his anti-human policies were also facing angry populations who wanted someone to blame for the growing chaos. Elder Sage Nith of the Crystalline Collective was one of the oldest and most respected leaders in the galaxy. She had lived for over 2,000 years and had seen many wars and disasters, but she had never witnessed anything like the current collapse. During an emergency council session, she stood up and spoke words that everyone needed to hear, but no one wanted to acknowledge. "We must face the truth about what we have done," she said in her crystal voice that rang like music through the council chamber. "We allowed our fear and prejudice to blind us to reality. The humans were never our servants or our subjects. They were our partners, and we treated them like a threat that needed to be controlled and contained. Her words hung in the air like an accusation that no one could deny. Every council member knew she was right, but admitting their mistake felt like admitting they had destroyed their own civilization through stupidity and arrogance. The silence that followed her speech was broken only by the sound of alien delegates shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Julie Roberts was working in one of the new human research colonies that had been built far beyond the galactic edge, where aliens could not reach them. Her laboratory was equipped with the most advanced technology that humanity had ever developed, and she was free to pursue research without any restrictions or oversight from alien bureaucrats. Julie intercepted alien communications every day as desperate scientists tried to reverse engineer human technology. She watched their pathetic attempts to copy human innovations, and she knew they would never succeed. Human technology was not just about machines and computers. It was about a way of thinking that could not be stolen or duplicated by beings who did not understand the creative process behind it. The alien scientists were like children trying to take apart a clock to see how it worked. They could identify the individual pieces, but they had no understanding of how those pieces worked together or why they had been designed in that particular way. Without the knowledge and intuition that had created the technology in the first place, their reverse engineering efforts were doomed to failure. The final humiliation for the Council came when they discovered that several other galactic civilizations were already establishing trade relationships with humanity's new independent colonies. These were advanced alien species that lived beyond the Council's territory, and they were eager to work with humans as equals rather than trying to control them. The Andromedans were an ancient machine intelligence that had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. They had never shown interest in working with biological species before, but they were fascinated by human creativity and innovation. The Andromedans offered to share their vast knowledge with humans in exchange for access to human problem-solving abilities. The Void Swimmers were energy beings that lived in the empty space between galaxies. They had technology that could manipulate space and time in ways that even humans did not fully understand. But they recognized that humans had a unique talent for adaptation and growth that made them valuable partners in exploring the deepest mysteries of the universe. News of these new alliances reached Council space and caused even more panic among the alien leadership. They realized that humanity was not just surviving without the Council, but was actually thriving and forming relationships with civilizations far more advanced than anything in Council territory. The humans had not just left the Council behind, but had transcended it completely. The economic statistics became more devastating with each passing week. Unemployment rates soared as factories and businesses shut down without human technology to keep them running. Crime rates increased as desperate populations struggled to survive in a collapsing economy. Political unrest spread across dozens of worlds as angry citizens demanded that their leaders find solutions to the growing crisis. Some Council species attempted to establish emergency trade agreements with civilizations outside their territory, but they discovered that most advanced species were already aware of how the Council had treated humanity. The galactic community had been watching the situation, and they were not impressed with how the Council had rewarded human partnership with fear and oppression. The reputation of the Galactic Council as a fair and wise governing body was destroyed. Other civilizations began avoiding contact with Council species because they did not want to risk being treated the same way humans had been treated. The Council found itself increasingly isolated as the galaxy moved on without them. Admiral Patterson received daily reports about failed alien attempts to contact human colonies and beg for assistance. The aliens offered tribute and resources and made promises of better treatment, but every offer was ignored. Humanity had found its own path among the stars, and there was no reason to look back. 1 year after the silent walkout from the Galactic Council, humanity had built something completely new among the stars. The human Commonwealth consisted of 47 independent worlds connected by the most advanced technology the galaxy had ever seen. Free from the restrictions and bureaucracy of alien politics, human innovation had accelerated beyond anything they had achieved while working within the council system. President Helen Brooks stood on the steps of the new Capitol building, on New Geneva, as she addressed both the human colonies and the listening galaxy. Behind her, the flags of all 47 human worlds moved gently in the artificial breeze created by the building's environmental systems. Her words were broadcast across human space and intercepted by alien communication networks throughout the galaxy. "We bear no hatred toward our former colleagues in the Council," she said in a clear voice that carried dignity and strength. "We understand that fear makes people do things they later regret, but we will never again accept the role of junior partners in our own achievements. Humanity has found its place among the stars, and we will not be moved from that place by anyone." The galaxy had indeed learned to function without human technology, but at a much reduced level of capability. The remaining council species had managed to maintain basic civilization by simplifying their systems and abandoning the advanced technologies they could not understand or maintain. Their ships were slower, their communication was less reliable, and their quality of life had decreased significantly, but they were surviving. Captain Steve Walsh commanded the exploration vessel New Horizon as it led humanity's expansion into regions of space that had never been explored before, free from council restrictions that had limited where humans could travel and what they could study. Steve's ship was making contact with dozens of new species who proved far more interested in genuine partnership than domination. The Helix Builders were a species of energy beings who constructed massive structures in the vacuum of space. They had been building for millions of years, but they had never encountered a species with human creativity and problem-solving ability. Working together, humans and Helix Builders were creating wonders that neither species could have achieved alone. The Deep Thinkers were ancient mechanical intelligences that had been contemplating the fundamental nature of reality for eons. They found human intuition and emotional thinking to be a fascinating complement to their logical processes. The philosophical discussions between humans and deep thinkers were leading to new understandings about consciousness and existence. The Time Weavers existed partially outside normal space and time, which gave them the ability to see possible futures and alternate timelines. They had been watching humanity's development for centuries, and they were excited to finally make contact with a species they considered worthy of their attention and respect. Each new contact and alliance made humanity stronger and more confident in their independent path. The Commonwealth was growing not just in size but in knowledge and capability, as humans learned from species far more advanced than anything in council space. The galaxy was vast and full of opportunities for those who were brave enough to explore it without asking permission from bureaucrats and politicians. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council continued to struggle with the consequences of their decision to drive humanity away. A new leadership had taken control after the old politicians were removed by angry populations, but the damage to their civilization was too extensive to repair quickly. The new Chancellor Thess was more humble and reasonable than Vex had been, but she faced problems that had no easy solutions. The Council had restructured itself to be more democratic and less controlling, but these changes came too late to prevent the collapse that was still ongoing. Many species had lost faith in the idea of galactic government and were pursuing independent paths similar to what humanity had chosen. The Council's authority over its member species was weaker than it had ever been. Captain Felix Chen had returned from his observation post with the Council to serve as humanity's first foreign minister. His job was to handle contact with other civilizations and to represent human interests in diplomatic situations. Felix had watched the Council's deliberations for months, and he understood better than anyone how completely the aliens had misunderstood humanity's nature and motivations. The moment that defined the new reality came when a formal delegation from the restructured council arrived at New Geneva's orbital station. The delegation was led by Chancellor Thess herself and included representatives from every major council species. They came offering a formal apology and an invitation for humanity to return to the council with complete autonomy and technological sovereignty. The offer included everything the council had refused to grant a year earlier. Humans would be free to develop any technology they wanted without restrictions. They could build as many colonies as they wished without interference. They would have equal voting rights, and their interests would be protected by galactic law. It was everything that reasonable negotiation could have achieved if the aliens had been willing to treat humans as equals from the beginning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood beside Felix Chen as they received the alien delegation in the main conference room of the orbital station. Jake looked exactly the same as he had when he walked out of the council chamber a year ago, but everything else had changed completely. Now he was meeting with aliens as the representative of an independent civilization rather than as a junior member seeking acceptance. Chancellor Thess spoke for nearly an hour as she explained the council's new position and their desire to repair the relationship with humanity. She admitted that the council had made serious mistakes, and she promised that those mistakes would never be repeated. The offer she presented was generous and reasonable, and it addressed every concern that humans had raised during their time in the council. When she finished speaking, the room fell silent as everyone waited for the human response. Jake and Felix looked at each other, and Felix nodded slightly to show that he was ready to deliver humanity's answer. Felix stood up and faced the alien delegation with calm dignity. "We thank you for your offer, and for the courage it took to come here and admit your mistakes," he said in a voice that was polite but firm. "We wish you well in your efforts to build a better future for your civilizations. However, humanity has chosen its own path among the stars, and we are content with that choice." The alien delegates looked shocked and confused. They had expected negotiation and discussion about the terms of humanity's return. Instead, they were receiving a polite but final rejection of everything they offered. Chancellor Thess tried to ask questions about what else humans might want, but Felix simply smiled and shook his head. "There is nothing more to discuss," Jake said as he joined the conversation. "Humanity appreciates the Council's change of heart, but we have moved beyond the need for Council membership. We have found our own way, and we are happy with where it has led us." As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Jake watched their ships disappear into hyperspace and felt a sense of completion. The galaxy was vast enough for many different approaches to civilization and progress. The Council would continue in its own way, having learned expensive lessons about the cost of fear and prejudice. But humanity had learned something even more valuable about the power of walking away with dignity when respect was not offered freely.